It was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life. Emily Caldwell had just married the man of her dreams, Nathan. Handsome, successful, the perfect match. The wedding was beautiful. The honeymoon a dream. It was the beginning of forever, or so it seemed. But just days after their wedding, Emily's story ended. March 17th, 2023, a day that would forever be etched in the minds of everyone who knew her. Emily Caldwell, vibrant and full of life, was found murdered in the honeymoon suite of a luxury resort in Maui, Hawaii. A shocking crime in what should have been the most blissful time of her life. But when the authorities arrived, the horror of what they found wasn't just the crime. It was the mystery surrounding who could have done it. And more importantly, why. At first, investigators didn't have to look far. Everyone thought they knew who had done it. Ryan Walker, Emily's ex-boyfriend, the one who had never truly let go. He had shown up at the wedding, and his presence raised suspicions. Everyone knew the history between Emily and Ryan. It was complicated, passionate, and messy. They had been deeply involved in college, but things had ended on a sour note. For years, their relationship had remained a painful memory, until now. Ryan's sudden appearance, just days before Emily's wedding, was enough to make the authorities question whether he had something to do with it. After all, what ex-lover wouldn't want closure or revenge when faced with the reality of the woman they once loved moving on, marrying someone else? So, naturally, Ryan Walker became the prime suspect. His past was filled with red flags, a history of erratic behavior, an unresolved obsession with Emily, and a pattern of poor decision-making. It seemed too perfect. But as the investigation into his whereabouts and possible motives unfolded, the truth started to slip away, and a much darker, more twisted tale began to emerge. Emily's death wasn't as simple as a love gone wrong. No, this was something far more sinister, something deeper. Years before they met, Nathan had been deeply involved with someone else, Claire, who he later discovered to be her wife's sister. A secret that would only resurface when Nathan met Claire at the wedding, reigniting a passion that had been buried. Nathan had tried to bury his own insecurities, to build a life with Emily, to leave the past behind. But when the wedding ended and the honeymoon began, his mind kept drifting to something far more dangerous, an affair years ago with Claire, now her wife's sister. But when the dust settled and the shocking details were revealed, the question remained. Who could kill the person they loved the most? And what drives a man to betray the very woman he swore to cherish? What happened next would change everything. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Emily Caldwell and Nathan Caldwell were the couple everyone admired. Emily, a kind-hearted schoolteacher, and Nathan, a successful real estate agent, had everything going for them. They were the picture of modern love, their relationship seemingly flawless. Their wedding was a fairy tale, a dream come true for Emily, and a proud moment for Nathan. Friends and family gathered in a quaint chapel, bathed in soft light, as Emily walked down the aisle with a smile that could have lit up the world. But nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. Emily's younger sister, Claire Donovan, had been estranged from the family for years. Claire, who had always been the more rebellious one, moved away to pursue a career in design, only returning to town sporadically. It was clear that her relationship with Emily had always been complicated, nothing overt, but the kind of tension that festered just below the surface. Emily, always the peacemaker, tried to keep things civil, but Claire's distance made things awkward. This time, however, was different. Claire had flown in for the wedding. Though she was present, her presence felt forced, and there was a subtle coolness between her and Emily that wasn't lost on anyone who knew them well. And then there was Nathan, the man Emily had just married, the man who had made her happy. But as he shook hands with Claire, there was a brief moment, just a flicker of a look between the two, an awkwardness that couldn't quite be ignored. Emily, ever the optimist, might have noticed, but she brushed it off. After all, it was her day. The focus was on the vows, the cake, the dancing, and the promises. But underneath the laughter, there was a quiet unease that only a few would ever catch. And then there was Ryan Walker. Ryan had once been Emily's college sweetheart. The two had been inseparable until life, distance, time, and decisions drove them apart. After college, Emily moved to pursue her career and Ryan stayed behind, his own path taking him far from her. But their connection, the kind that leaves an indelible mark on your soul, never fully went away. It had been years since Emily and Ryan had seen each other. The only reminder of their past was a few photographs tucked away in dusty albums. Yet there he was at the wedding, looking much the same, but different all the same. There was something about him that lingered. His gaze, the way his eyes met Emily's during the ceremony. It was impossible not to notice. He wasn't just an old friend. He was someone who still carried the weight of unspoken feelings, a man who had never truly let go of the past. As the evening wore on, the air grew heavy with unspoken words. Ryan, alone at the bar, watched Emily laugh and dance with Nathan, his expression unreadable. Emily, too, seemed unsettled, her smile a little too wide, her laughter a bit too forced. Claire had noticed it as well, how Emily seemed to drift between excitement and apprehension when Ryan was around. Claire's sharp eyes saw the old chemistry between the two, the unfinished business that time hadn't quite erased. Nathan, of course, was oblivious to the quiet undercurrents. He had no reason to suspect anything. As far as he knew, he and Emily had left all their pasts behind, starting fresh with a new chapter. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the joy and the love, a seed had been planted, a seed of doubt that would soon grow into something far more sinister. And in the midst of it all, as Emily and Ryan exchanged a few too many lingering glances, it became clear that the past was not as dead as they all thought. But behind the smiles, the vows, and the vows of eternal love, there was something else, something far darker. Secrets that had been dormant, tucked away in the corners of their pasts, ready to be unleashed. And soon, those secrets would explode, turning Emily's wedding day into the beginning of something much darker than anyone could have imagined. The stage was set. A perfect wedding, yes, but for someone it was the perfect trap. Nathan Caldwell and Claire Donovan were once in love, deeply so. A love that burned hot and fast during their college years. They shared an intense, secret affair that was everything they needed at the time. Passionate, forbidden, and full of promise. But like so many college romances, it didn't last. Claire left for grad school, moving across the country, and the distance did what distance always does. It slowly erased their connection. But for Nathan, it wasn't that simple. He never truly let go of Claire. Even after meeting Emily, even after marrying her, something in him always lingered on that old love. And now, fate had brought them back together. At Emily's wedding, Nathan hadn't expected to see Claire again. The years had passed, but when he saw her standing in the back of the church, the years melted away. It was as if no time had passed at all. The same spark, the same pull. Their eyes met for the briefest of moments, and there was no mistaking it. Something was still there. They spoke briefly during the reception, casual at first, polite pleasantries. But the air between them thickened with unspoken words, with memories of what once was. Nathan couldn't help but linger, his gaze following Claire across the room, his thoughts drifting back to their time together. Later, when everyone had begun to drift away from the crowd, Nathan found himself alone with Claire in a quiet corner of the venue. There was no need for words, not really. The chemistry between them was undeniable. They shared an intimate conversation, their voices low and private. It wasn't just small talk. It was a conversation about the past, about lost time, about what could have been. The unspoken tension simmered beneath every word. For Nathan, this wasn't just a reunion. It was a chance to revive something he had never truly let go of. His thoughts turned from nostalgia to desire, a dangerous, obsessive thought. What if he could have Claire again? He was married now, yes, but that didn't seem to matter. The pull of that old love, the pull of Claire, was too strong. And Emily, as perfect as she was, could never fully fill the space that Claire had once occupied in his heart. But secrets like these, when buried, have a way of resurfacing with deadly consequences. Nathan Caldwell had always been a man who thrived on control. He wasn't just successful in his career. He was adept at managing every aspect of his life, especially his relationships. His love for Emily, though genuine, was marked by a need for domination. He wasn't the kind of man to allow the unpredictable nature of emotions to sway him. No, in Nathan's world, everything had its place, everyone had their role. And Emily's role, it seemed, was to be the perfect wife. But that wasn't enough for him. It never had been. Even in his marriage, Nathan's mind wandered to places he couldn't tame. He had Emily, sure, but in the back of his mind, he could never quite forget Claire, his first love, the woman who had always been just a little out of reach. College had been their time, a brief but intense connection that had set his heart on fire. But Claire had left, and with that, the affair had faded. At least, that's what Nathan had tried to convince himself. The reunion at the wedding reignited something he had long buried. As the days passed, Nathan found himself increasingly drawn to Claire. There was an undeniable chemistry between them, a shared history that neither of them could escape. The past had come rushing back, and Nathan couldn't help but fantasize about what could have been. After all, he had the perfect wife, the perfect life, so why couldn't he have the one woman he truly desired, the woman who had once been his? But Emily wasn't blind. She had noticed the way Nathan and Claire interacted. The lingering looks, the private conversations. There was an underlying tension between them, one that Emily couldn't ignore. She may have tried to dismiss it at first, chalking it up to the nostalgia of family and old friendships, but something inside her snapped. The subtle signs turned into glaring red flags. And one evening, just days after the wedding, Emily confronted Nathan. She had come to the realization that the relationship between her husband and her sister wasn't as innocent as she had once hoped. The confrontation happened late at night, when Nathan thought he could escape the pressure. Emily cornered him in their hotel suite, her voice trembling but sharp. "Nathan," she began, her eyes burning with a mix of hurt and fury. "I've seen the way you look at Claire. The way you two talk to each other. Don't think I haven't noticed. What's going on between you two?" Nathan froze, his usual calm slipping for just a moment. He could see the suspicion in Emily's eyes. He could feel the weight of his own guilt pressing down on him. But instead of facing it, he did what Nathan did best. He deflected. He downplayed, avoided, tried to bury the truth. "It's nothing, Emily," Nathan said, his voice tight. "You're overthinking this. You know it's just family, right? There's nothing to be upset about." But Emily wasn't convinced. She had already pieced it together. The way they had exchanged looks, the private conversations that she had overheard. Something deep inside her snapped. She had given him everything, her love, her trust, and he was betraying her with her sister, the one person who should have been her ally. "No," she said, stepping closer, "there's more to it than that. I've seen the way you look at her, Nathan. And I know you, this isn't just some harmless fling. You're still in love with her, aren't you?" Nathan's expression shifted then, anger clouding his features. He had never been good at facing the consequences of his actions, especially when it involved things he didn't want to admit to. The truth hung in the air, and instead of confronting it, he pushed back. "I don't need to explain myself to you, Emily," he snapped, his voice rising. "I've put up with enough of your suspicions. I'm not the one who's been hiding things. You have, hiding the truth from me all this time. You think I don't know about your past with Claire? You think I don't know the secrets between you two?" Emily's heart shattered as the words cut deep. She had never imagined that Nathan could see her as the enemy in this. But something about the accusation, the venom in his voice, shattered whatever veneer of calm he had maintained. He was losing control, and in that moment it felt like he was spiraling, consumed by jealousy, guilt, and an obsession he couldn't contain. The argument escalated quickly. Words turned to shouts. Accusations flew like daggers. Emily stood her ground. But Nathan wasn't the man she thought she knew anymore. In a fit of rage, driven by years of repressed feelings and anger, Nathan reached for the nearest object. The violent clash that followed left Emily lying lifeless on the floor. In those final moments, Nathan's mind was a blur. He felt justified, betrayed by Emily for holding back the truth about her past with Claire. She had pushed him too far. She had become the obstacle standing in the way of his renewed love for Claire. And as he stood over her, the reality of what he had done began to sink in, but it was too late. There was no turning back. In his mind, the murder wasn't an act of rage. It was the culmination of a twisted desire. His need to control, to have everything he wanted, even if it meant destroying the very thing he had built. As the investigation unfolded, the spotlight shifted. At first, Ryan Walker, Emily's ex-boyfriend, seemed like the obvious suspect. His sudden presence at the wedding, combined with his deep emotional history with Emily, made him a natural target. Investigators quickly learned that Ryan had never fully let go of Emily. His lingering feelings and the awkward tension at the wedding were enough to raise alarm bells. It didn't help that Ryan had been near the resort the night of Emily's death, and witnesses reported seeing him at a local bar, where his erratic behavior suggested possible substance abuse, further fueling suspicions. However, despite the mounting circumstantial evidence, Ryan remained adamant about his innocence. His alibi, though weak, checked out, and his demeanor, though visibly emotional, was not one of a man driven by rage or revenge. The authorities kept him under surveillance, but they couldn't tie him directly to the crime. As the days passed, it became increasingly clear. Ryan Walker was not the killer. The breakthrough came when detectives turned their attention to Nathan Caldwell, Emily's husband. As they dug deeper, they discovered an unsettling pattern in Nathan's behavior, a man who craved control. It didn't take long for investigators to piece together the puzzle. They found Emily's text messages, which had hinted at her suspicions about Nathan and Claire's closeness. In one of her final communications, Emily had mentioned how unsettled she felt about the way Nathan and Claire had been interacting during the wedding. She had even confronted Nathan privately, but there was no record of her ever mentioning this confrontation to anyone else, only a deep, unexplained fear in her tone when she spoke about it. In the end, it wasn't the jilted lover, the ex-boyfriend, or the estranged sister. It was the man who stood beside her every day, the man who promised to love her forever. The breakthrough came when the detectives discovered a hidden pattern in Nathan's behavior. He had always been obsessively controlling in his relationships, whether with Emily or Claire. Evidence from hotel surveillance footage revealed that Nathan and Claire had shared several private moments throughout the weekend, speaking in quiet corners, sharing lingering glances, and even walking alone together. But what sealed the case against Nathan was the evidence of a confrontation. Forensic experts found traces of blood beneath the nails of Emily's hands, evidence of a violent struggle. The timeline matched with the moments Nathan was unaccounted for, and his whereabouts during Emily's final moments raised further suspicion. The most damning piece of evidence, however, came from the crime scene itself. Police found an expensive cufflink that matched one Nathan had worn during the wedding. It was discovered near Emily's body, with traces of her blood on it. Further investigation revealed Nathan's fingerprints on the cufflink, which he had clearly discarded in his frantic attempt to cover his tracks. It wasn't just the physical evidence that implicated Nathan, but his motive, his obsession with Claire. After all, it wasn't just Emily he had married. It was her sister he had never fully let go of. When Emily confronted Nathan about the affair she suspected, her last moments were filled not with shock, but with betrayal and fear. Nathan, in a fit of rage, felt cornered by his wife's accusations. In his mind, Emily was standing in the way of what he believed was his fate, to reignite the affair with Claire, the one woman he had never truly let go. Nathan, in his obsessive need for control, believed he could get everything he wanted. And when Emily threatened to expose the truth, he silenced her in the most brutal way possible. When Nathan was finally arrested, the shockwaves rippled through both families. Emily's family, devastated by the loss of their daughter and sister, struggled to make sense of how the man they had welcomed into their lives had turned into a murderer. Claire, who had once seen Nathan as a part of the family, was left to grapple with a truth too horrifying to accept. The man she had once loved had killed her sister. In the aftermath, interviews with those close to the families painted a picture of shock and disbelief. Ryan, who had long been suspected, expressed his own confusion, stating, "I never imagined Nathan could be capable of something like this. He seemed so perfect for her." The detectives, too, spoke of their disbelief, noting how Nathan had managed to maintain a perfect facade for so long, hiding the cracks in his personality from everyone around him. And so, Emily's life was tragically cut short, not by the man who had once loved her, but by the one who had promised to love her forever. Emily's family would never fully recover from the tragedy. Her mother, in a quiet interview, spoke about the unbearable pain of losing her daughter in such a senseless, brutal way. "We trusted Nathan. He was family," she whispered through tears. Claire, too, was left with her own devastating words. Standing outside the courthouse, she paused before speaking to the reporters. "I never knew what he was capable of. I never thought he could hurt her." As Nathan's trial looms on the horizon, the families of Emily and Claire are left to rebuild their lives, forever haunted by the shadows of betrayal and murder.